So I hope you're having a wonderful day today. So today's topic, what I want to talk about was energy expenditure. So as we're going through this, one of the biggest things we talked about initially when you're doing the weight loss phase is that we're trying to reduce fats and carbohydrates, keep your proteins and your fibers high. And the main reason is, and we're going to learn here, is why that is important. And that's very important for the maintenance phase also, because a couple of these things will hopefully help dictate what you do or what you don't do, especially when you're having more of the like 20% in the 80/20. And like we said, weighing's very important. You have to weigh. If you don't weigh, then you don't know where you're at. You have to know if you're going up, if you're going down, if you're staying the same. So when we're looking at this, we're looking at the energy priority of your body. So there's a bunch of different ways your body gets energy. So like we discussed, your body has a baseline of what it needs for calories to just work for energy. All of your metabolic processes to work, heart pumping, lungs filtering out oxygen, your kidneys working, digestion, everything, all the processes, and there's a bunch of them. So that requires energy. Let's say, for example, it's 2,000 calories per day. So you know that when you consume food, your body is going to need to burn 2,000 calories a day. Now, you're either going to get that from the food you eat, and we're going to go over that. That's what this kind of this energy priority list is going to be. It's going to be either what you ate for food or it's going to be stored. Okay, so like we talked about, there's differences in how this works. And I think as you're going through the maintenance phase, paying attention to how your body reacts to certain things will give you better data to know if this is something that you may want to change, if there's some things that are going okay. So this is one of the biggest questions people have too when they're on the reduction phase is like, why can't I have alcohol? Well, unfortunately, alcohol is just a very poor choice because it does a couple bad things for your body. One, obviously, it's a toxin. So the more you drink of it, the more your body has to filter it out. Obviously, you can get alcohol poisoning, and there's people who have passed away from drinking too much alcohol. So the issue is when you drink alcohol, it shuts down your body's ability to burn fat. Now it depends on how much you do that. If you're having just one drink, or if you're having four or five, but it's an empty calorie. It's almost as dense as fat. Fat usually is about 9 calories per gram, and um, for alcohol, it's around like 7 calories. Versus when we talked about like proteins and fiber and fruits, it's about 4 calories per gram. So obviously it adds calories up. It also makes it so that your body uses this as a priority. So when you start drinking alcohol, it starts to shut off your body's fat burning. So even if you're eating healthy, you're staying in a calorie deficit, once you start drinking alcohol, it's starting to prioritize and use alcohol as its primary energy source. So it's going to burn that first. And that's really one of the biggest issues for people. If you're having drinks every single day in the maintenance phase, and you make your decision what you want to do, I'm not here to tell you what to do or what not to do, just going to give you the information. You're probably going to find it harder to maybe lose weight if you're one of those where you're in the maintenance phase and you want to see that weight just start to creep down a little bit. Having alcohol consistently is going to make that very hard for you. If it's something where you can just keep it to like once or twice a week and you have a couple drinks here and there, then it will not be as big of an issue for the maintenance phase if you're trying to still lose some body weight. So the first priority, if you have alcohol, regardless of anything else, it's going to burn that first. Now, second is going to be your blood glucose. So this is as you're having primarily carbohydrates, they go into your body, it gets broken down, that sugar gets put into your blood and it starts to circulate. So that's the next, the easiest way to do it. Now it's going to prioritize what you eat for carbohydrates and that sugar source versus what you have stored. So the third priority is going to be your stored carbs. So think about what you're eating right away if you're having. That's why we really want to limit like sugar and simple carbohydrates, like we talked about in processed foods, where it just makes a massive spike in your blood glucose because your body is going to burn that fuel first. And obviously, there's other ramifications that can cause health problems if you have too much or too high blood glucose levels. So we want to try to limit it when we're having with our food so that ideally our body can start to burn it from the stored carbohydrates. So inside of your liver and your muscles, you have glycogen. This is also how your body wants to try to burn for like intense exercises. If you're really trying to like do anything intense or long duration, as you've learned, like they'll talk about long distance or marathon runners as like carbing up the night before. So they're trying to increase their glycogen stores as much as possible so that when their body and they're in that demand of exercising, it's essentially going to burn that for the fuel first. So we have alcohol, we have the blood sugar that you have. So when you're eating food right away, we have our stored carbohydrates or glycogen. And then the next one's going to be dietary fat. So assuming that you didn't have any alcohol, your blood glucose levels are normal, and you're not trying to break into, or you've already used your glycogen stores, the next thing is dietary fat. Now, fat is not as easy to break down and use for energy. It's more like low intensity. So they talk about, if you're doing something really intense, really fast, it's more going to be for like you're burning your glycogen stores or your carbohydrates. Fat is more of your slower. So what we want to do is ideally try to keep alcohol to a minimum. Like we said, making better food choices so that our body isn't going into that uh, high levels of blood glucose, like you're spiking your glucose and your insulin levels. Then our body can start to burn the stored energy we have for glycogen in our liver and our muscles. We're keeping our dietary fat at more of like a low moderate level. So we're not having a lot of that. Like we talked about too, fat has 9 calories per gram. So it's more calories for, smaller amounts of food. Also very easy to overeat. So if we keep all of those first 4 lower, then we're going to get to where we want to be, especially in the weight loss phase. And this is why our reduction phase works so well, as it starts to then tap into your adipose tissue. So if we're keeping ourselves in a calorie deficit, so we know our body burns 2,000 calories a day, and then another 500 for walking around. So we're at 2,500. If we keep our calories at 1,000 calories, we have a large deficit. And that's where your body will start to burn and break down the stored calories in your body fat. Now, that's your body fat that you can kind of grab and pinch, and then also your visceral fat, which is around your organs and heart and tissue like that. So that's where we want a lot of our fat loss to come from. That's why we don't want to have like super high levels of carbs and fats all the time, high amounts of protein, high amounts of fiber, and then more like your moderate amounts of healthy fats and carbs. So that's the big reason why we want to do that. All of those fat stores, think of them as like little grapes or balloons. I know we talked about this initially with the reduction phases. The more that you overeat in calories, beyond what your body burns, it's going to start to fill those balloons up. And it's like a little grape that starts to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And then essentially, when you're eating a calorie deficit, like we talked about here, and you keep everything in the right order, it starts to burn those calories from your stored fat. And then it starts to shrink. And those fat cells go from big grapes down into dried up raisins. And you have, millions of these on your body. And as that happens, then you start to shrink. And then the last resort is if you burn all of that, you get down to protein. Protein is the last thing. Now, your body does not want to burn muscle. And that's why with our program too, we prioritize muscle when you're doing the reduction phase. We also have you take amino acids, which are what are building blocks of proteins too. So that's where the last resort. Now, that's why you don't want to stay in like long term. And this is why a lot of people are having issues with like GLP-1 and where they're talking about all of the muscle mass weight loss for people is because when they take those injections, some of the people just don't eat at all. So they're doing the starvation for like a long period of time. And nobody actually taught them what to do as far as like a good nutrition plan to go with the injections. If somebody wants to take those, that's totally fine. But they really should be following a good, healthy food plan. And that should be high protein, high fiber, like we talked about. That way they're eating something more like us if they are taking, a very strong, steroid hormone level of like an appetite suppressant. So that's the hierarchy of where you're at. We have our alcohol, we have our blood glucose, we have our stored energy in our liver and our muscles, which is our glycogen. Dietary fat would be the next one, and then 5 will be adipose. Now, and then protein. The big issue for a lot of these is if you do like if you do like 3 of these in a row, you're going to be in trouble. So this is where people gain weight, especially on weekends. If you add alcohol, okay, you're drinking, and drinking then usually triggers people to get hungry and eat more. So then you start to eat more like simple carbohydrates. I'm eating chips, I'm eating popcorn, all that stuff that people like. And then you're starting to add fat into it too. So when you're having alcohol, you're eating a lot of simple carbohydrates and you're eating a lot more fat. That is a very easy way for you to gain weight, and it won't seem like you ate that much. You have 3-4 drinks, which is 400, 500 calories, depending on what's inside of them. You have 3-4 servings of chips, which doesn't seem like much, but it's not that much when you actually think about it. And then you also add some fat into it too. You just had like 1,300 calories, and it wasn't even with a meal. So that's why I work on this day. This is why when you're thinking about making your choices, always try to plan it out. This is one reason too why alcohol is just not a great friend of yours if you're going to have it consistently, especially in the reduction phase. But with maintenance, try to obviously space it out more in moderation too. And if you're going to have it, then try to keep it away from high loads of carbohydrates and fat. So have a great day.